So I don't have too much pride to admit that even as a big horror movie fan who feels like they've seen everything, somehow I had not seen the original Alien. Or if I did, maybe I was a lot younger and I just don't remember it. This movie was not like a mainstay in my family household. We didn't watch these movies a lot, like Alien movies. We weren't huge into sci-fi to begin with, but I've always heard so much good stuff about Ridley Scott's Alien. You know, how it holds the test of time, how it's well acted, how it's well shot. And I was super excited to get to see this movie in a movie theater for the first time because they re-released it for its 45th anniversary, and I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised with how well this movie held up. And at least for me, something I thought was really interesting about this movie, being able to see it for the first time in a movie theater, is that before the movie, since it's the 45th anniversary, they were doing an interview between Ridley Scott and Fede Alvarez, the guy who's making Alien Romulus. And they were kind of talking about, cinematography, directing, some of the, ploys they did to make the old movie look more realistic, why it stands the test of time. I thought it was really cool to get a little bit of the insight into filmmaking, like how they made the movie, some of the inspirations for Alien Romulus. Kind of got me excited to see that movie. And for the few of you who've maybe never seen this movie like I hadn't, or you're just unfamiliar with it entirely because you live in a cave, the original Alien by Ridley Scott, what it's about, you have this group of people, they're going through space, they're supposed to be bringing back ore to Earth, and they get this transmission from an unknown life source from this planet. The crew awakens and they kind of go to check it out. And the crew in this movie is not dumb by any means. Like, they're completely skeptical of the fact they have to land on this planet they're not familiar with. They want to know, like, is it inhabitable? Like, what are they doing? They kind of go around in there. They realize it's this giant, like, catacomb structure, this ship they find themselves on. And I thought it was really interesting to me how you kind of get a little bit of tidbits of teasers. You start seeing some eggs, you see some moving alien life forms, some things moving in the shadows. I think this movie does a really good job of building you up to the central premise of the monster you're going to encounter without showing its hand too early. And one of the main reasons why I've never been like a fanatic about the Alien franchise, and I never really got into it or thought I would like it, is I always thought it was going to be very like cookie cutter, like sci-fi horror alien stuff, but I actually was pleasantly surprised in how much I liked the story, the buildup of this movie, which makes sense because older horror movies, 70s, 80s horror movies, they had a good way of like building up tension without showing you too much. They don't really show you the monster a whole lot, especially in the first half. But I was pleasantly surprised at how much I was engaged in the story, and I really liked the pacing they had of it before you even meet the monster. That's something I definitely did not expect when I went into this. And immediately when watching this movie, one of the things that definitely stands the test of time to me is the acting. I mean, this is the movie that put Sigourney Weaver on the map, obviously, and made her like a heartthrob to a lot of dudes in America. But she's not the only one doing good stuff. I think all of the characters in this movie are well acted. I think they're memorable, and to me, I was definitely getting a little bit of like a Jaws vibe to this, like because it came out around the same time where you have like a little bit of character progression, you have some good background story to the characters, some of their inspirations, incentives to doing this mission. I just thought all of the characters were memorable, including hers, obviously the main character, Ripley. And obviously Sigourney Weaver plays Ripley. She's like the final girl of this movie, the main character of this movie. She'd go on to kind of be like a big thing because of this movie, but you have other people doing good stuff besides her. You have a character named Dallas. He's the one kind of leading the ship. This is his crew. He's kind of believable in the fact that he's the captain. But my favorite character in this movie was probably Parker, and I like his comedic relief timing for a 70s movie. I thought it worked really well to kind of like, break up a little bit of the tension. I really like his like bromance with the Brett character and how his incentive's only about money. He was just probably the most memorable character outside of Ripley to me. I thought he was a great character in this movie. And for the most part, I think the cinematography, like the way this movie looks visually, almost entirely is absolutely great, especially for a 70s movie. Like, I understand the hype and how groundbreaking it was at the time because this is a movie compared to other sci-fi movies. I reviewed a movie, Event Horizon, that was from 1997. I think this movie's like visually as good practically as that movie is, and it was 20 years in advance. What this movie does so well, in my opinion, is when you're dealing with like the spaceship and like the planet, and they're trying to give scale to like how big the world is, like the spaceship's interior, what it looks like when people are walking on the planet. They somehow did like a fantastic job with giving this scale through like looking at the images on a TV monitor as if that's something the crew would look, so it looks a little bit more realistic because obviously practically it wouldn't have held up. It was just a 70s toy structure. It was really fascinating to me hearing how they managed to pull this off. It got me really inspired to think of some outside ways that I could possibly make a film someday using really low budget techniques. And at the time, obviously, this movie was like a groundbreaking movie because of the practical effects. It was a scary movie at the time. And I gotta say, after watching this 45 years later, the practical effects hold up phenomenally. Like almost everything in this movie, some of the creature designs I thought was absolutely awesome. I'm not the type of person to like wince in movie theaters or get, like kind of like my stomach turned, but there's definitely some visuals at this movie that really unsettling. The way they're kind of creepy with like the claws of the aliens. I thought this is the type of movie I wish I could have seen when it came out originally in the 70s to get that shock value it had culturally, because Obviously, it doesn't hold up now in that sense to me because I've seen so many movies it's like 40 years later. But at the time, I would imagine this was a movie that scared the shit out of people. And as a big fan of all the practical effects in this movie, there were a couple creature design choices I thought were really good, especially for being almost 50 years old. I thought the face hugger, particularly, is absolutely like gut turning how disgusting that was. I would imagine at the time, theaters did not like the sight of that thing. I mean, I thought the face hugger was completely unsettling. The practical effects when they try to remove it from the guy, there was just something so unsettling to me about that creature design, the way its tail wraps around the guy's neck. I don't know, something sticks with me with that. And even though it's an old movie, I'm not going to say any spoilers in case somebody hasn't seen it, they want to check it out. But the scene where you're first introduced to the alien, you know what I'm talking about, that's a pretty dang memorable scene too. And I thought they did a really good job at masking the practical effects. I'm sure it was kind of hard to do, camera stills where they show the blood, then they show the creature to get it to look like fluid the way it comes out. But I thought it held up really well. Even the scene when it runs across the screen, I thought it held up really well, even better than some recent movies I've seen with CGI. Because I saw that movie recently, Sting, about like the mutating spider and stuff, and that movie was mostly CGI. And that movie CGI wasn't bad at all, even though it was low budget. But I thought this movie, for being almost 50 years old and having practical effects, had even better like effects and gore than that movie had. And it's a 2024 movie, so I definitely understand why this movie was so captivating at the time. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal in that regard. But when you get to the point where everyone wants to come see this movie, obviously the xenomorph, the alien, the big selling point to this movie, I thought the practical effects on that monster particularly are some of the best of the 70s, 80s I've seen ever. The point I was questioning myself, how have I not seen this franchise? Because I thought it was going to be like one of those old creature feature movies where you see like this janky robot, or you see something on strings. This thing is really, really good. The way they masked it in the shadows and you get these shots of its face only. You hear the breathing. I thought this movie's incredibly suspenseful for like a 70s movie. And after hearing an interview with the director, Ridley Scott, obviously, he made a big point. Like his thing was, if we have an alien or a monster movie and the monster or the alien doesn't pay off, the movie sucks. Like he says that word for word. And I agree, because whenever you have these movies that are tense, you get to see it and you go like, oh, that sucks. Like it's not good. Like that's not the case with this movie. I like the fact that he knew that he couldn't overplay his hand, because if you see something too much, it loses tension. But I also like the fact that he put a lot of thought and consideration into this monster to make this a memorable monster. He didn't show it in like too much light. Some of the jump scares they do with the monster work incredibly well. I don't know. I was totally on board with this. I like this a lot more than I thought I was going to like the xenomorph. When they do the big reveal of the monster in this scene, I definitely think it pays off. Like the big iconic scene with the water. I think the way they have it in the backdraft is kind of like coming down from behind you, and you start getting introduced to, just the body of it, and it kind of just like scales up and you see how big the alien actually is. I think the payoff is incredibly well. Whenever you have a movie like a monster movie with practical effects, it's really that scene that's going to sell you on the rest of the movie, because if you're not bought into the fact that the monster looks good, it's scary, the scale of it, you're really not going to care at all. But I definitely see how this grabbed the audience's attention immediately, because from that scene on, I was hooked and I thought, okay, the monster design's actually awesome in the scale of the movie. There's also a robot in this movie, not to get into any spoilers, but I thought that held up incredibly well too. He's kind of like disconnected from his body, and you can see like a head. And I think it holds up incredibly well. I was kind of trying to dissect it in real time, figure out how they were doing the wiring, like where the talking was coming from. I couldn't figure it out. And, for a 50-year-old movie, compare that to like the Jaws shark or something, right? Like I thought it held up super good. And I was surprised that there's more movies that don't go practical. If you could even do that 50 years ago, we need to bring it back. And something else I thought was pretty funny about this movie I really liked is they had a cat in this movie who was on the set when they filmed it. And the cat does like such a good job of adding to the realisticness through its expressions, because they have a bunch of camera shots of like the cat getting scared and things like that. And I don't know how they did it. Maybe they were scaring it, or they were just looking for it in real life or something. Maybe it actually was afraid of like the prop. But the cat really sells the fact that this monster is real. And it really brings scale again to the fact that they're on this ship and that everyone's scared of it. And as I said, I saw this because it came back to theaters for a limited time because it's his anniversary. And I wanted to see it in theaters if I could. But my main takeaway from this, even seeing it in the packed theaters, how much fun everyone was having watching this. Like, I hope they bring a lot more of these movies back, because my theater was clapping, they were laughing. Obviously, some people who knew more about the movie than me were in there. But it was pleasantly surprising to me how well this movie held up. I think this movie could be released today, even with kind of like the lower budget cinematography, the way like the camera work is and stuff. And I think it would hold up incredibly well to some of the horror movies I've seen this year. I mean, I've seen some creature features. I've seen some like low budget Blumhouse movies. I think this movie would fit right in 2024. I think that's how well it stands the test of time. Only thing I think is a little bit dated about this movie particularly is like the AI of like the spaceship and the way it talks during like a self-destruct sequence. things like that. I feel like the way they had it count down every single number was probably not the wisest choice, and like the little bit of the CGI or the special effects they use at the very end of the movie is obviously completely dated, but I'm willing to overlook all of that when the rest of the movie looks really, really good cinematically and it's acted really well. So yeah, I had a blast with this movie in theaters. I'm really glad I got to go back and see it and experience how it was meant to be seen. I'm glad I got to see the interview kind of explaining a little bit behind the movie. So I got to see how it was made because I was really fascinated with how they made Star Wars. This movie was equally cool to hear a little bit, and it got me pretty excited, honestly, to watch a few more of these and get excited for Alien Romulus. But this is definitely a movie to me that withstands the test of time. I think it's damn genius what Ridley Scott was able to accomplish in the 70s. I understand the hype completely, and I thought it was pretty damn good, and I'm probably going to buy it and add it to my collection. So pretty surprising to me. I'm not fanatical about science fiction horror movies, but this one was pretty dang good for being 50 years old. So if you've somehow not seen it yet, go out and see it while it's in theaters. Trust me, it'll be worth it. So if you've seen the original Alien, comment down below. Let me know if you think it lives up to the hype, if it's as groundbreaking as the rumors are. Or comment down below what your favorite movie in this franchise is, because I'm probably going to watch a few more of them. Or let me know what your favorite Ridley Scott movie is. And as always, if you haven't subscribed already, what the hell are you doing? Click that down below. Gonna be more horror movie videos, more new releases that come as always. Maybe comment down below some of the ones you want me to get around to reviewing. I'm open to recommendations, so maybe I'll go back and tackle some of the ones people asked me to do. Other than that, that's all I got in this video. Peace.